Hey y'all, welcome back to the Team LoCoFit Roundtable. Lauren Conlon, owner of Team LoCoFit, joined by training director Ryan Conley and assistant coaches Jillian, Karina, and Lauren. I was trying to make it a little more official, but then I just saw Ryan was not pleased with his intro. Anyways, Ryan does training stuff, but training director sounds way cooler than that. So in any case, thank you guys for joining again. We hope that you really enjoyed the last episode. And if you haven't listened to the last one, you didn't get to check out our fall rambles because Ryan was missing. So we actually got to talk about pumpkin health things and pumpkin culture in general. So if you're interested in that, yeah.
Glad I wasn't here.
Ultimately, that's why we went on this ramble, because you weren't. So we were allowed to dive into the most basic of all basic things. So we are not talking about that today. We actually have some really cool topics for today. And this was actually a question from one of the clients, and it was asking about full body training versus training, specific body part split, right? So obviously that could mean a lot of stuff. That could mean, hey, you train, each body part once per week, or you do upper, lower, basically anything besides full body, right? So the question really comes from the perspective of, if I'm doing more, as in full body movements or, hitting body parts multiple times per week, is that going to get me better results than doing maybe like a split body part system? So I think there's obviously so much nuance to this, but I do think that full body splits can be very effective for certain people under certain conditions. And Ryan, I know you had a few notes for this, so why don't you kick that off, and then we'll all weigh in on this topic.
Actually, I'll let Karina go first because that was your client, right, Karina? So just you kick it off.
Yeah, so just to...
Well, never mind. I'm just not even going to delegate things.
I just seeing how things work around here now.
Just to make everyone aware of the specificity of the question. The question was someone who actually trains 5 to 6 times a week, and so she wanted to know if training full body every one of those 5 to 6 times a week, rather than upper, lower, upper, rest, would be more beneficial overall, versus having specified body parts per day. And so my immediate thought is, and Ryan, I would love your insight because you are, the training pro here, that for, it's context dependent. If you have very specific body parts you want to bring up, you're going to have to try to hit those harder on specific days, allow that body part to recover so we can have some effective muscle protein synthesis and hit it hard again. I don't think that you'd be able to hit a specific body part that you are trying to bring up as intensely if you hit it like 70 to 80% every single day, rather than having a harder workout with some rest in between to allow those muscles to recover.
Yeah. So exactly. I mean, recovery is going to be the number one indicator on how the program is going to work. And it's not even necessarily the program itself. It's more the individual, and it's going to come to a couple factors like their overall strength. How strong are they? Like if they're extremely strong, training 5 to 6 days a week, full body is just usually not going to work. And within that context, you can kind of play with small variables. Like if you're trying to build the muscle specifically, like maybe you're doing a deadlift day, maybe you're doing like a straight leg deadlift day, and then maybe like a bent over barbell row day. So you're hitting the back with like different kinds of movements that are really heavy, but you're still like the loading is going to be significantly different. Like there's going to be 200 pounds different between like each one of those progressively. So that's like small ways that you can do it. Dr. Scott Stevenson likes to talk a lot about incorporating different types of the muscle rounds and like pump sets, just basically executing the exercise differently. So you're not necessarily changing the exercises a whole bunch, but you're changing the way you're executing them. So that's going to put different load, different time under tension on the muscle group that you're trying to train. So you're not just doing the same thing, like you said, 70 to 80% or like 80 to 90% over and over again every single day. Sets and reps. So just total number of repetitions, like how often are they extending the elbow? Like if you're doing 1,000 repetitions throughout a week, that's going to probably come with some overuse symptoms. And if they're also extending the elbow or doing some kind of movement where the joints are being loaded slightly improperly for their body type, then you're going to have some issues break down very, very rapidly. So when volume is higher, which tends to occur with higher frequency and total body stuff, there's just total higher volume, you're going to run into walls much more quicker than if you were doing a lower type volume or lower frequency split, just because you're moving not in the best manner. So if you're not able to load the muscles properly and the joints are getting beat up, it's just going to escalate very, very rapidly, very quickly. And basically their training history also is going to be a huge indicator for that. So if they're an Olympic athlete and they grew up doing the sport or grew up bodybuilding and they have a huge, huge, tremendous base that they've built up over 10 years, they're going to be able to do things like that much more easier. So if your client, particularly if she's been training for a long time with that kind of a total body frequency or that kind of a frequency, she may be able to tolerate that, while somebody else coming into the sport or basically not having that kind of an exposure to whatever sport they're trying to do, if you start doing high frequency stuff with them, they're just not going to be able to recover. So all of those things are going to ultimately loop back to recovery. So it's just a ton of different variables, but ultimately it's going to be the individual, and then the program itself is just going to have to mesh with them.
Also, babe, too, the like when you said training history, but also just like background in general of like athletics. So we train a lot of clients who very obviously have an athletic background and an athletic base, and they understand where their body is. They understand basic things like a squat and a hip hinge and just different movements that are a little bit maybe more like related to sport, even if they weren't necessarily lifting like as a kid, right? And they have these kind of athletic backgrounds. Somebody who didn't really do any of that growing up. And there's lots of people who never really did sports growing up or didn't do sports where they moved like that. So we do see that as a little bit more of a hindrance later. So somebody who's never been exposed to something like that, even if it was just sports as a young kid, and they understand like where their hips are and how to hip hinge and how to squat and how to deadlift just by nature of movement, that's going to be a lot different than somebody who's like now like 20, 25, 30, 35 has had like, I used to run a little bit, I worked out sort of. Now they're trying to train. That person is not going to be able to really, they're going to have to learn a lot more before they can even get to a point where they're effectively training, let's say 5 days. Because like you might be training, but like how much more effectively can you train after like a 5 years of doing that? So like a good example is like if you ever see people who, I'm just thinking of two people off the top of my head who do like a lot of volume. So like Dana Lynn Bailey, when she used to be, I mean, still even now, even though she's not training for anything, she's just an animal. But like DLB, right? Like if you ever see her workouts, right? And she just crushes body parts and you're like, how does somebody do this? Or like Doug Miller, like I just know from like knowing him and knowing Paul and stuff, like he just goes in and just destroys stuff. And you're like, how could somebody actually be doing that? They've been training like this. Well, I know, especially for DLB, she has a huge athletic base. And she's been lifting weight for years and lifting hard for years. So she can go in there and do that. Doug's been doing bodybuilding training for like a long ass time. So he's built this up. But somebody like looking at that, like you can go in and maybe have some like higher frequency, higher training volumes, like stuff like that for a short amount of time. And then you're going to get trampled. Like I've done programs like that and just gotten obliterated. And this was even in my like prime of like recoverability when my life was a lot different. I mean, literally got obliterated. Remember when I did like the Chico cycle? And then I did that, like, I'm going to say air quotes DUP, because I know DUP is not.
No, that wasn't Chico. That was a Smolov cycle.
Smolov, sorry, not Chico.
Yeah.
Smolov,
which was not my idea, by the way.
No, it was a squat cycle of, anybody knows like the Smolov stuff. I used to do GV, again, all these air quote things, I'm taking them out of context, but German volume training stuff, I would just go into the gym and just do that all the time with like one thing. I'm like, I'll just do this. I'll do it tomorrow for a different body part. Or, when I did that kind of more of a DUP type split that used to be popular, about 5 years ago, I got the flu 3 times in prep. Like I was getting obliterated by doing that. You know what I mean? So like, what is the cost to benefit ratio is kind of what you have to look at. But one thing that I'll add before you guys go, a lot of people, like if they want to just train a few times a week, and this goes back to are you training or are you working out? If they just want to work out a few times a week and they want to hit primarily full body, get in and out, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, have at it. Like that's totally fine. But if you're in a place where you are training for a specific goal, that's going to look a little bit different than if somebody's just going in to like work out. And like, cause we'll see a lot of people who like I went and took a class this day, and then I did like I went to F45, and then I took a swim class, and then I did Pilates, and then I did this EMOM, and then and it's like, well, they're doing kind of full body every day. Like, how are they recovering? These are shorter sessions, and they're not necessarily pushing themselves to the point where if somebody was training, again, air quotes, hard and trying to progress in certain manners, it would just be a lot different.
Yeah, and I just wanted to loop back to another really great resource. A while ago, Ryan wrote an article on building. I think it was called like
building a physique athlete or something like that. Building a beginner.
Yeah, and he goes, he talks in depth, like very well about like the importance of athletic background for, you know, physique athletes and bodybuilders. Not saying that if you don't have an athletic background, you're not going to be a great physique athlete, but I mean, those people definitely have an advantage. And like Lauren and Ryan had previously said, it all depends on like what you are adapted to. I think when I think of like full body every day, I automatically think of like these crazy CrossFitters, like the chicks who are insane, like Brooke Wells and Katrin David's daughter. They like were doing gymnastics since they were like 5. So they have that like very strong foundation of like full body strength and are able to train for like, well, they're also professional athletes, so they just train like 6 hours a day. But still, it's like
caveat important.
Overall, it's like what you're adapted to. If you have never, you know, hit full body as frequent as 5 days a week, and you decide to do it one week, like be prepared to be in a lot of pain and very sore and exhausted.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like, people will look at professional athletes sometimes, like not bodybuilders, like real professional athletes, and will look at that, and even CrossFitters who, you know, at the highest level, and they're looking at training like that. And like, unless you are living that life, like which 99% of people are not, that it might not be appropriate for you. You know what I mean? So you can't look at that person and be like, oh man, I want to start training like Brooke Wells. Have you been doing gymnastics since you were 5? Do you have does your schedule, like, is it appropriate for this type of training? Like, are you that good to really spend that much time training? Like, that's another thing too. Like, does it really matter that much? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors there, and I'm going to stop talking. So you guys.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Can go now.
You guys basically like touched all the points there, but I think the one thing that I will add that we talked about before was that your schedule, basically. You know, if I have a client ask me about, you know, their split, I always say that it really depends on their schedule as well, because I'm not going to make you train, you know, 5 times or 6 times a week if your schedule doesn't allow that, or if it's going to be really hard for you to stick to it. So if you can only train like 3 to 4 days a week and you're just starting out, then that's another reason why full body may be a good option there. And then also you have to take your goals into consideration, just like you guys said before.
Yeah, schedule is everything. What you want to do is very different than what you can do. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is lost a lot when people we talked about get excited, which is awesome. But like, we have to kind of reel that back a little bit and say, okay, what can you actually do? And we can always move up to that, but it doesn't mean that we have to do it right away.
What you got, Blonde?
Not a whole lot at this point. 20 minutes in, I'm ready to go. Okay.
Curveball.
I'm like, am I even a part of this podcast?
No, you're just gonna stare at the audience on YouTube for this one.
I'm like, I changed my shirt for this. Okay. So
you needed to change your shirt. That was like, it was not coming across well on the camera.
No, I looked emo as.
It was very mysterious. I liked it.
It was a black sweater turtleneck. It was just there was a.
It's very dark.
Oh my god. Okay.
I'm like, dude, like, what are you wearing?
Like, that emo kid in the corner.
So you've dabbled in CrossFit stuff. I would like, that's what you are currently doing. So
here's where I'm going with this, guys. So I would never do this to a training client, but this is also why I like to have control over my clients with both training and nutrition. It's just helpful because I can see everything. Because there are some training clients I have that I will program a little more volume for just based off athletic background, like you guys have all stated, that I wouldn't necessarily do for others, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with you, but just based on what people can handle and what they need. What I would say, if somebody came to me and they claim to be crushing their workouts every day and they're hitting total body 5 or 6 days a week, like, I would say you need to check your intensity because it's probably not there. Like, if you are feeling all good after crushing total body 5 to 6 days a week, you need to check your intensity. So I can speak to this personal experience. Like that was me, not necessarily total body, but I was going to the gym literally 6 to 7 days a week. And I'd be sore sometimes, but I could still get up and go the next day. And that's because my intensity was not there. I started CrossFit. I literally had to dial back to training 5 days a week. And I have to be very careful about my rest day split, because if I try to do 5 days a week straight, fuck that, I'm toast. So that's my biggest thing that I would see with that, is just that I think a lot of times the intensity will suffer if you try to do something like that. And we know that, especially for somebody that's in the off season and trying to build, we need to have that intensity there. You need to be pushing heavy weight, and you need to be recovering. And those two things probably aren't going to happen consistently if you're trying to train total body every day. So, and that's on top of, if somebody's also doing HIIT or a lot of steady state, things like that, also to take into consideration would be like, what's your cardio look like? Because that's another thing that can be draining. What's a split of your cardio? Are you doing it immediately following your lifts? Are you splitting it up? Things like that. So lots of factors, very person dependent, but I think that the most appropriate situation for somebody to train total body would be Jill's point of schedule. Like you're only going a couple days a week. You're just looking for general health, things like that. I just find that with a lot of the people that we see a little more advanced, even if it's general population, still typically a little more advanced, and then also competitors, they just need something a little more structured than that, with a little bit more of a intent behind the programming.
One more thing, like if the route they choose is to do 5 or 6 total body training days, how I would start that is 2 or 3 hard days, like challenging days, and then the other 2 or 3 are going to be less intense, because you still need that intensity. But if you like training often, that fits your schedule, you like that, you're going to have to figure out ways to manipulate variables to where the 3 training sessions are tough, they're pushing you, and then the other 2 or 3 are more just accessory work, isolation work. You're changing variables within sets and reps, and you're changing variables within like how heavy something can actually be loaded. So if you're barbell squatting versus like a dumbbell goblet squat, you're doing a very similar movement pattern, and you're trying to do the same cues and hit the same muscle groups and learn the same motor pattern. Loading is going to be completely different. So those are the small things that I would say that, like, if you want to try that route, I would manipulate those variables. But I would, again, only do that. I would try and do the minimum effective dose. So if you can make progress with 4 or 5 days a week of upper, lower, whatever it was, then let's stick to that for as long as you can, until you need to add another training session, or you need to make it harder. So that would that's how I think I'd wrap that up with, is just getting the most out of the least. So you're not throwing all your ace cards on the table at once. You're saving something in your pocket always to like be able to go to and progress towards. So that's all I got.
Something in your pocket. That's a good takeaway. Ryan always has the takeaways. Put a little something in your pocket. So yeah, I think that was a really good, well-rounded response for that question. Of course, it's super nuanced. There's no straightforward answer here. This question is a little more straightforward. And this is something kind of a trend and things that we've seen on social and even in person and whatever. And it's people saying that. So backtrack. A lot of people don't eat vegetables or fruits. That's number one, right? Like we see this literally whenever we get client feedback as far as like the food time. We send out like a sheet basically. So, hey, what are you eating? When are you eating it? This and that. We kind of like refine that and help them out. A lot of people are not eating vegetables. Like literally might see a vegetable like once every other day kind of a thing. Or, maybe they're having, fruit, but they only eat bananas like every time. Like there's no variation, there's no variety with it, right? So those are just some examples. And then so a lot of supplement companies have now come out with greens products, right? So the one that we all suggest, support, and take is from First Form. OptiGreens, I don't know why I just did that so awkwardly, is OptiGreens 50 from First Form, right? So it is a blend of 50 different foods. It's 11 plus servings of vegetables and fruit. There's some digestive enzymes, and there's a probiotic blend in there as well. It's a pretty basic probiotic blend that works for most people. The digestive blend is great. And then, of course, there's a ton of different wide variety of micronutrients that are in there, right? There's 50 ingredients, hence OptiGreens 50. So because there is a wide variety in there, there's it's variety of food that you're not eating. If you look at the label, I'm not eating those vegetables. Like, I'm never going to eat those vegetables. Like, let's be honest. Even some of those fruits, and it's in a really high concentration, right? So that is, again, a positive that you're missing if you only eat the same ones or you don't eat enough of them. So under no circumstances does OptiGreens 50 replace vegetables or fruits, right? And I think, as always, there's always people who are like, this is the best thing ever. I don't ever eat fruits and vegetables anymore. And then there's people who are like, that's so stupid. Like, just teach your clients better habits. Like, they shouldn't be eating like scumbags. And so it becomes this huge, like, where it really needs to be in the middle, right? Like, hey, most people need to supplement with something like this because they're just not getting enough variety or quantity. So, hey, here's in the middle. You should be adding this to a healthy diet that you're already eating, right? This is going to be helpful. But of course, now people are like, oh, you shouldn't have that. It's a waste of money, this, that, whatever. And I just want you guys to weigh in because obviously I fully support it. Something that I've been using since the products have come out. I've had many other people, of course, clients use it. It's been like a godsend for people with digestive issues. Not everybody, but a lot of people. It's a very basic thing that will help most people. And again, just at the baseline of the nutrient level, like, you're just simply not getting that in your diet, no matter how healthy. I mean, literally, besides like Rhonda Patrick, I don't think anybody in the world eats enough variety of specific micronutrients in like the right dose. I mean, she probably has it covered. But unless you're eating like Rhonda Patrick, which nobody here listening probably does, you most likely are going to be able to use this. But this does not mean that we're saying don't eat fruits and vegetables. Like, of course, we are teaching that habit first and foremost. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you guys weigh in on this. Go. Who's raising their hand? Jill.
But yeah. It's literally like any other supplement you can think of, right? It implies that you have your diet and your training in check already, which we do that through coaching and lifestyle habits, right? So the addition of the greens powder is basically a foundational supplement for your overall health and wellness. And I myself have used it for, I feel like, a year now straight. And I added in the reds recently when they came out with them. So I've noticed a big change in my digestion with it, but all of my clients, if they like to, incorporate it, they do. And I find it does help, especially if people are, lacking in the vegetable department, just because whether they're working, night shifts or they have crazy schedules where their meals, maybe they'll only have like 2 to 3 vegetables in their meals, where they could get a lot more variety through the greens powder. So again, it's not a substitute for your vegetables. You're still supposed to eat your greens and, have a wide variety of foods, but it's more realistic to use the greens powder in order to get a wide spectrum.
Lauren.
So this is essentially how I like to look at it. I like to look at the greens as more of a digestive aid rather than even like a vegetable servings type of situation, because really what it's coming down to is like, this will help you get some of the benefits that you would get from eating the actual vegetables. But if you look at the nutrition label of OptiGreens, it's not like 14 bananas, 35 carrots. Like, no, it is like wheatgrass, it's extract, it's spirulina, things like that, like superfood.
That you're not eating.
No, you're not eating. So would you get some of these nutrients and stuff if you eat the vegetables? Yes, but you're not going to get all of them from supplementing with this product. So I like to look at it for mostly digestive health, especially for people that are taking like a fiber supplement, because I have found that a lot of times clients that are taking a fiber supplement and then remove it seem to be a little better off. Not everybody, but then adding the greens can kind of give a little bit of a boost without the aggressiveness of a straight up fiber supplement. So I've liked to use it in that way. And I've seen a lot of benefits with digestion with clients doing that, because it does cover such a broad spectrum of things. And the probiotic blend that's used, I believe it's like DDS1, is one of like the most well-known and well-studied probiotic blends that there is. And it's especially can be helpful for people that have some sort of like lactose issue. So that's pretty much everybody, right? Because we lose our ability to digest lactose as we age. So like Lauren said, it's a pretty broad probiotic blend that they're using here. It will help most people. I would also say you can mess around with how much of it you take, things like that. But again, Jill nailed it with, this is on top of your diet is already on track. Your nutrition, or excuse me, your training is on track. Let's add this and see if we can't get a little more benefit. But it's the same thing when people are, what about a fat burn? What about a CLA? Well, guess what? If your other shit's not together, this is not going to magically make your shit be together.
Yeah.
Like literally your turd, or
like literally.
Like, are we talking about like a literal shit
Like,
is more compact, or
it will
just
probably
overall shit and shit.
all of your every single bit of it.
you want a nice taper? Take the OptiGreens 50.
Why do I do this on every podcast? Can
You're
somebody
awkward.
like literally?
I'm sure you wanted to talk about tapered shits, Karina, but let's hit your point.
So I feel like we've really hit the hammer, hit the nail. What hammer? Whatever that saying is.
Karina's dieting, everybody.
Hit the
Okay.
nail on the head, right?
You need to keep it simple, girlfriend.
Whatever. Okay, so we've said over and over again, eat your vegetables first, and then get the OptiGreens. But I also wanted to throw in, like, from a metabolic health perspective, and kind of like a biochemistry standpoint, is I honestly, I think greens is fantastic for people with digestive issues, but I also kind of see it as kind of like this insurance for getting all your vitamins and minerals in, which is like very, very like watered down explanation, super important for overall metabolic health. Your metabolism has all of these like working enzymes to make sure that everything is functioning properly, and vitamins and minerals are like keys to those enzymes. So if you are like not getting enough of those, your overall health just isn't as good as it possibly could be. Again, definitely like eat whole foods first and make sure your diet is all there. But OptiGreens is really great for filling in those holes, because again, OptiGreens has like all like tons of different foods that we just aren't, you're like not even finding in grocery stores that are really good for you. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. But yeah, I mean, like we've all said 50 times, definitely eat your veggies and supplement your well-rounded diet with greens.
You got anything to add, Rye?
I sometimes eat vegetables and I sometimes take OptiGreens, so I'm probably the worst to ask about this. But I'm going to take some OptiGreens today. And Lauren,
If anybody needs OptiGreens every day, it's definitely Rye. But
I used to take it a lot. I do like the supplement. I just need to start doing it again.
It's so frustrating when something that is, I get when people like talk shit about stuff that's like not good. I'm like, okay, whatever. But when there is something that is like very beneficial to a lot of people, and then there's like a subgroup of people that basically like make fun of it, but not just this product, but just in general, like a whatever it could be, right? Like insert whatever thing. Like that's where we kind of have like an issue. Like, hey, just because like there might be people out there who are claiming it like cures everything. Like that's not what we're saying. We are saying that it is going to fill the holes for this whole different spectrum of what every single person talked about. It's your, your micronutrients. It's like your insurance policy for all the enzymes that you need. It's going to help with your digestive health. It's going to help with the variety that you're missing. So everybody kind of hit on different key parts, which I think is why it's so helpful. And people just need to understand that, yes, it is a supplement. That's what it is, a supplement. But it is one of the it's literally the thing that I would recommend everybody would say, hey, what should I be taking? Greens, protein powder, because most people aren't getting enough protein either. Not that protein powder is superior. Most people just simply aren't eating enough high quality protein. Jill.
Yeah, I was kind of going to say something along the same lines where like, a lot of people just need to understand that like it's a supplement like anything else. But I also got a little, flustered just because some people do compare it to shit companies where I'm like, this is a foundational like health overall wellness supplement here. And you have to just like you have to have your nutrition and training in check and then add that in. It's not a like scam, or it's not a weird it's not a useless supplement here,
Yeah, knowing, and we could probably do a whole podcast, honestly, on supplements. I would be super down to do that, just because I think it's a really misunderstood topic.
Coming up next.
Actually, it's not, but maybe next time, because we have another one that we're going to do. But that is going to happen because I think there is so much misunderstanding with the supplement industry in general, that people just write it off completely because they don't understand it, and they don't understand what actually is a quality product, and that really is the most important thing. So something, again, that we stand behind First Form because of how they manufacture products. They manufacture everything. They are under very, very stringent rules for their manufacturing process, which is why you can trust what they are actually giving you. So yes, it does cost a little bit more money, but you're actually getting what it says in there. So you can read all about that on the website. I don't want to just make this a whole like blah about First Form, but we support it. We back it. And this is not something that I take lightly because I literally have my grandmother taking these products and my clients and myself. Like, why the fuck would I take something that isn't good for me? Like, I don't get millions of dollars a year from First Form to promote Optigreens, just letting you guys know. So it's not like that's why I'm saying this. So just something to keep in mind. I'll stop because this is feeling a little ranty. In any case, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. No pumpkin talk, but it's fine. Whatever. We'll just, we'll let it go. But
Next podcast.
Yeah, you sound like you really let it go.
I'm harboring so much emotion over this. But in any case, thank you guys for listening. If you've not already subscribed and left a review, please go do that. We would love for you to do that. Jill usually says a 10-star review, but there's only 5. So if you could do 5, and maybe if there's a 10 option, maybe it's just Jill created that. But we would really appreciate it. It allows other people to see the show and to tune in. So and always, we would love your feedback. So if you have any feedback for us, any topics you want to have us discuss, I don't know why I couldn't say that, please just email us, info@teamlocofit.com, or just message any of us directly on Instagram. All right. So thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you next time.